Happy December 1st, my wreath making friends. As we are winding down 2023 and my very first year here on YouTube, I wanted to share with you the top 3 most watched wreath tutorials that I've shared with you here on my very first year on YouTube. Remember, all of these tutorials are just a recipe, so they may be season specific, but feel free to tweak each recipe and make it your own. You'll find timestamps below in the description of this video so you can jump ahead where you'd like. Okay, let's dive in. The third most watched tutorial of 2023 was this Deco Mesh Poof and Curl method. Remember, tweak it to the season of your choice. Today we're going to make a super cute Halloween wreath on a Dollar Tree frame with some Dollar Tree supplies. So let me show you some of the supplies we'll be using today. This is just a super cute trick-or-treat sign that I picked up from a store called Gabe's. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's kind of similar to a TJ Maxx. And we're going to be using 10-inch solid black Deco Mesh and 10-inch glitter orange Deco Mesh. We'll be making this on the 14-inch Dollar Tree wire wreath frame. And I also picked up some standard size pipe cleaners or Chanel stems, also from the Dollar Tree. Before we dive in, let's have a little Wreath 101. So if you're new to wreath making, this is what's called a wire wreath frame. You can get them from a variety of different places, but as I mentioned, this guy actually came from the Dollar Tree. And so when you take a look at your frame, it's got a little bit of a bevel to it. As you can see, it's rounded here, and then it's flat on the back, so it can rest nicely on your door. There are 4 wire rings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's also 6 crossbars around your wreath frame. And then the distance between each crossbar is what we refer to as a section. And there are 6 sections on this wire frame. The first thing we need to do is prep our wire wreath frame to add in our Deco Mesh. So if you've not already done so, go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun so that can be heating up. And we're going to grab our pipe cleaners or Chanel stems. You can grab these from Dollar Tree, any crafting store, or Amazon. And you're going to need 18 of the pipe cleaners. I always try to match my pipe cleaners as closely as I can to the colors of my wreath. However, it's not super critical because typically they're nice and tucked away. We're going to add 3 pipe cleaners per section all the way around the wire frame. And so we're going to take our first pipe cleaner and tuck that underneath rings 1 and 2. And we're going to place that right in the middle between these 2 crossbars. And you're just going to wrap that pipe cleaner around rings 1 and 2 and give it a couple of tight twists. Once you do that, point those pipe cleaners in towards the center of your wreath. And now we'll add 2 pipe cleaners around rings 3 and 4, basically centering them each a third of the way through here between these 2 crossbars. So we'll run that underneath rings 3 and 4. We're going to give those a couple of tight twists, like so. And then point those guys outwards. Let's do that one more time. Basically, you're going to want these equally spaced between the crossbars. So I've just run this pipe cleaner underneath rings 3 and 4. I'm giving it a couple of tight twists. And I'm going to poke that guy outwards. So it looks just like this. Let's do one more section together and then we'll speed ahead. So first pipe cleaner is going underneath rings 1 and 2, right in the center between the 2 crossbars. You're going to give that a couple of tight twists and point those guys towards the center of your frame. And the next 2 are going to go around rings 3 and 4, basically centered equally as best as you can between the 2 crossbars. And guys, you'll hear me say a lot, not looking for perfection here. Nobody's going to be measuring. And you can scooch them a little bit if if you need to do so. And of course, those outer 2 pipe cleaners will be pointing away from the center. Excuse the background noise, guys. The neighbor is mowing. All right, now that we've completed the first 2 sections of our wreath frame, go ahead and repeat the same process, adding 3 pipe cleaners to each section all the way around your frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now I've added all of my pipe cleaners into my wreath frame, so you should have a total of 18, 3 per section. So now we're going to flip this guy over, and now what we're going to do is just add a pea-size amount of glue at one of the connecting points where the pipe cleaner meets our wire frame, just to keep those guys from sliding around. I'm going to lay a couple of pieces of old cardboard underneath my wreath frame, just so I don't get any glue on my cutting mat here. And again, so your pipe cleaners attach at 2 spots. You only need to add your pea-size amount at 1. That's just to keep it from sliding. Just like so. And if any of your pipe cleaners shifted while you were moving your frame around, go ahead and scoot them back in place before you add your glue. I'm going to give this just a couple of seconds here to let the glue stop dripping, and then I'm going to set our wreath frame here off to the side so we can work on the next step. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get our sign prepped. Now, because this is a heavier sign, I'm going to actually staple some pipe cleaners to the back of this guy to really ensure a good hold. If you don't yet have a crafter's stapler, they're basically more heavyweight than a desktop office stapler, but far less heavy duty than a garage stapler. And they're great for just stapling down pipe cleaners or floral wire stems into your signs and embellishments to really hold those guys in place. If you don't have one, I will leave a link for you below in the description of this video so that you can snag one and add it to your wreath making toolkit. But in the meantime, just go ahead and cut some scrap ribbon. Lay your pipe cleaner down, add a ton of hot glue, cut about 1 inch to 2 inches piece of ribbon and place it on top of that hot glue. Give it a good 30-second hold and set it off to the side to dry for a good 15 minutes, and that should do the trick. But if you're going to staple, like I am, I'm going to come to this far edge here because the sign isn't quite as wide as my normal signs. And so what I'm going to do is staple it as close to the edge as I can without, there we go, letting that staple poke through on the side, just like so. So it's probably 1/4 inch in. And then it looks just like this, guys. And then for some extra measure, I always like to run a little zigzag of hot glue right on top of that stapler, just to make sure that guy's not going to go anywhere. And now we're going to sit this off to the side so that it can be drying while we work on adding the deco mesh into our wreath. So go ahead and grab your wire wreath frame and bring it back to your work area. And you're also going to need a standard size ruler, and you'll want to have a pair of scissors handy. Today we're going to do the poof and curl method as we add our deco mesh in. And we're going to use the black 10-inch deco mesh for the poofs, guys. And so this is just a plain, fairly see-through 10-inch standard black deco mesh. And what I want you to do, as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. You want it to be curl side down. And you're just going to lay that down in your work area. I've given myself about 18 inches or so of mesh to work with. And we're going to scrunch and gather the mesh into our fingertips to get it anchored down into our wreath frame. So I'm going to take my thumbs and leave them stationary. They're going to hold my Deco mesh. And then I'm going to use my 8 fingers to just scrunch and gather the mesh back into our hand like so. So you've got this little tail. Now take that tail and fold that back under and grab a hold of it again. And what that does is tuck away the raw edge of your Deco mesh. If you're new to working with Deco mesh loves to fray. And so anything we can do as creators to help prevent the fray is always ideal. So keep a hold of that Deco mesh. And at this point, our wreath frame has no top or bottom. We're going to start on the outer level at any of these pipe cleaners. So just come to any set of pipe cleaner ties on the lower level or outer level, open them into a wide V. Take that tail of Deco mesh and you're going to place that all the way down to the base of that V so that it's laying right on top of your frame. You'll have about an inch tail, and then just take those pipe cleaners and give them a couple of tight twists to anchor that guy down. So once you've got that anchored down, it's time to make our first poof. And we're going to make 10-inch poofs. And so you're going to take your standard ruler, lay it right on top of the ties that we're anchored down to, come out to that 10-inch mark. And again, guys, not looking for perfection here. No one's going to measure your poofs. And then you're going to scrunch and gather your mesh into your hand like so. Keep it pinched between your fingers and come to that very next set of pipe cleaners. Place that pinched area all the way down to the base of the V, like so, and then give that 2 tight twists. And point those guys back outwards. And you've just made your first 10-inch poof. So let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. Grab your standard ruler, lay it down at your most recently set of used pipe cleaners, identify that 10-inch mark. Pinch and gather your mesh into your fingers. Hang tight with that. Come to your next set of pipe cleaners and we're just staying on that lower level, guys. Take that pinch of Deco mesh and place it all the way down at the base of that V. And give it a couple of tight twists. Go ahead and add your 10-inch poofs all the way around your lower level, and then I'll meet you back here so that we can jump to the upper level. All right, it's time to add our last lower level poof. And so we're going to follow that same method, friends. Just go ahead and place your ruler down on your most recent set of ties. Come out to that 10-inch mark. Scrunch and gather your mesh. And we're going to come to where we added our tail in at the beginning and carefully untwist that pipe cleaner. And then add that last poof right on top of that tail, all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. And you've just added your last lower level poof. And so now it's time to jump to the upper level. And so to do that, you're going to take your Deco mesh, gather it into your hand, and you're going to pull it cleanly and tautly. There's no poof at this point. And we're going to go up and to the next or closest set of ties. And we're going to come in behind that set of ties, keeping our mesh taut. Just like so. We're going to go all the way at the base of that V of our chenille stems or pipe cleaners and make a couple of tight twists. And now you can see that we've just successfully jumped our mesh from the lower level to the upper level right here. And it's a nice, clean, taut piece of mesh. And now we can go about adding our upper level poofs. We'll follow the same method that we used on the lower level with one exception. Your upper level poofs will only be 8-inch poofs instead of 10. We like those upper level poofs to recede in a little bit on your wreath so that that outer ring really can shine and doesn't get covered up. So we'll lay our ruler onto our set of ties at the upper level. We'll come out 8 inches. We'll scrunch and gather. It's a little bit trickier for the upper level because you have to work around your lower level poofs, but certainly manageable. And just like the lower level, we'll come to that next set of ties, open them up into a wide V, place that deco mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and give it a couple of tight twists. So let's go ahead and add our 8-inch poofs all the way around the upper level of our wreath base, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, it's time to add our last upper level poof. So I'm just going to add my ruler on top of my most recent set of ties, identify that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather, and we're going to come over here to where we jumped our mesh up earlier. And again, carefully untwist those ties. And then lay that mesh right on top of where we jumped up from the lower level, all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. Just going to fluff out that poof here. And we've just added our last upper level poof. And so now it's time to cut off this deco mesh. And so you want to be careful here, friends, that you don't accidentally cut a poof or something that you don't mean to. And so what I do is just gather my mesh here, pull it together cleanly and tautly, and then I put my hand behind it to serve as kind of a guard so I don't accidentally cut something I'm not supposed to. I come up a good inch to 1.5 inches, and then I cut that off. That nice little tail there will keep anything from coming undone, and don't worry, friends, nobody's going to see that. So as you can see, we've begun to get some coverage, but it's still pretty light and airy. So we need to move on to round 2 of the deco mesh process. So go ahead and sit that wreath base off to the side, and you're going to need either your self-healing mat and a rotary cutter, which, by the way, friends, if you're new to wreath making, the rotary cutter is really one of the first things you should add to your wreath making toolkit. It basically is like a mini pizza cutter, and it lets you cut your deco mesh quickly and with nice clean lines. I'll make sure I leave a link for this for you below. If you don't have a rotary cutter and a self-healing mat, no worries, just grab your ruler or tape measure and a good pair of scissors. And now it's time to cut the deco mesh into pieces for our curls. And so remember, we've got 18 sets of pipe cleaner ties on our wreath base. So we're going to need 18 pieces of the black and 18 pieces of the orange. We're going to cut our deco mesh into 10-inch pieces. So you're going to need 18 10-inch pieces of the black and 18 10-inch pieces of the orange, and then I'll meet you back here. Go ahead and bring your wreath base back to our work area here. And I would recommend that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin or something of the sort. These actually came in a 10-pack from the Dollar Tree. And we're going to add 2 curls to every single set of pipe cleaner all throughout our wreath base. So I'm going to scooch that back just a little bit. And let me show you how to make a curl, friends. It's super quick and easy. You're just going to grab a piece of your deco mesh. We'll be adding 1 black and 1 orange curl to every single set of ties. Put that in your work area, and as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. You'll want to keep that curl side up, and you're basically just going to roll this guy into a cylindrical tube, just like so. And so that middle area is probably 1 inch or so in diameter, and then of course it flares at each end. So once you've made your first curl, grab your clip and just pinch that guy in the middle to hold it in place. And then grab the next color and do the exact same thing. Lay it down in your workstation, curl side up, and roll your piece of mesh into a cylindrical tube, just like so. So now we've made our second curl. We're just going to place 1 curl on top of the other into a sloppy X, and you can come to any set of ties on your work frame here, friends, because you're going to add one orange, and one black to every single set of ties. So you'll just come to any set of ties, place that Deco Mesh Curl X right down to the base of those pipe cleaners and give them a couple of tight twists, just like that. We've just added 2 curls to our first set of pipe cleaner ties. So go ahead and add 2 curls, 1 black and 1 orange, to every single set of ties throughout the entire wreath frame, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, now that we've added our curls into every single pipe cleaner tie on our wreath base, just look at the quick transformation we made. What a fantastic base. At this point, this guy is about 24 inches in diameter, so it's going to be a great size wreath, and it's probably every bit of 8 inches thick. Let's just see. About 6 inches thick. So it should fit between a standard door and a screen door. So it's time to move on to the next step. And just to give you an idea of what I'm going to do with my sign, I've actually decided to place mine right in the center of my wreath. You could also place it towards the bottom, off to one side or another, totally up to you. But mine's going to be sitting here once it's time to add that in. So I just wanted to share that with you real quickly. And let's talk about our very next step. So you're going to need some orange Deco Mesh tubing and some black Deco Mesh tubing. These both came from the Dollar Tree. And then you're also going to need a 1.5 inch orange based ribbon and a 1.5 inch black and white buffalo check. Those are both going to match with our sign. Super cute. We're going to place 1 ribbon tail in every single set of pipe cleaners with the exception of 1 on the upper level. So remember, we have 18 sets of ties. We're saving 1 set of ties for a bow. So we need 17 pieces in total of our 1.5 inch ribbon. You can choose which one you have 8 of and which one you have 9 of. I'm going to do 9 of the buffalo check. So let me show you really quickly an easy way to quickly cut some ribbon tails. I want your ribbon tails to be 11 inches in length. So just roll out first ribbon. Guys, I'm sorry for the noise in the background. The neighbor's still doing some yard work. So you're just going to roll out your ribbon. Identify your 11-inch mark and just pinch it with your finger, and then fold your ribbon back and forth accordion style until you have the number of pieces that you need. Once you have the total number of pieces, in my case 9, I chose to do 9 of the black and white buffalo check, trim off the rest of your ribbon. And then you're just going to want to make sure your stack is put together nicely and your ends are marrying. And you can either choose to dovetail your ends or angle trim. I'm going to angle trim. And so I've not even separated them, guys. I'm just going to come down about 1 inch, cut up on the diagonal to give me that angle cut. And then I'm going to flip my stack over. I'm going to make sure those ends are married up nicely. And I'm going to do the exact same thing, just like so. And then once you're done, you've got the total number of tails that you need. They're all equally measured. And when you cut them, you've already trimmed your ends. Easy breezy. So now repeat that same step with your orange ribbon, and I'll meet you back here. Now that our ribbon tails are all cut and trimmed and ready to go, we're going to sit those off to the side and prepare our Deco Mesh pieces. So if you're new to working with Deco Mesh tubing, friends, it's basically 1/4 inch in diameter, and it's really flexible and pliable, but it also squishes out pretty quickly. And so when you're working with Deco Mesh, you don't want to pull on it. You just want to let it lay organically as you're crafting with it, and let it lay as it wants to so that it doesn't flatten out. And we're going to need 8 pieces of one color and 9 pieces of the other color, measured at 21 inches in length. So I'm just going to measure that out, and remember, I'm letting it lay organically and I'm not pulling on it. I'm going to identify that 21-inch mark and cut it off, and then I can use this piece as my measuring piece. And doesn't need to be perfect, friends, nobody's going to be measuring. So go ahead and cut 8 pieces of one color, 9 pieces of the other at 21 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. All right, all of my Deco mesh pieces are cut and ready to go. Go ahead and bring your wreath base back to your workstation and go ahead and grab a small pair of snips or a good pair of scissors. And now it's time to add our ribbon tails and Deco mesh bows into all of our wire ties or pipe cleaner ties on our wreath base. Now remember, we're going to add 1 set of ribbon tail and Deco mesh combo to every single set of ties, with the exception of 1 on the upper level. It doesn't matter, you know, which set of ties you reserve for the bow, because at this point we've not added our sign, so there's no top or bottom. Just remember, 1 set of ties on the upper level. Don't add in any tails because we're going to add a bow. And so we've got our solid orange ribbon and then our black and white buffalo check ribbon. And then we've got our black Deco mesh tubing and our orange. And so what we're going to do, I always like to start on the lower level. You can start anywhere you'd like. I'm going to grab a single piece of ribbon because we're going to add 1 ribbon tail with 1 piece of Deco mesh to every single set of ties. You're going to identify that center point either by eyeballing it, or if you prefer, you can fold it in half, and then that line will give you that center point. You're just going to pinch it in the middle so it looks like a men's bow tie. And then you're going to kind of fold it into a loose V over your thumb. You'll come to any set of ties. I'm going to marry the orange ribbon with the black Deco mesh tubing, and then I'll marry the orange black Deco mesh tubing with the black and white buffalo check ribbon, but you can certainly add them in as you wish. So we folded that into a V. I'm going to lay it down here in my work area. I'm going to grab a piece of my tubing, and remember, we're not going to pull tautly because it will flatten it out. And with my hand, I'm going to take an end of the tubing and just lay it in my hand, pinching it with my thumb, and I'm just going to make a figure 8, just like so. And you want 1 inch to 1.5 inches of tubing left over on each end so that it doesn't come undone. But, you know, again, guys, not looking for perfection. So you can see that my loops are not the same size. It is okay. Now I'm going to add that right on top of my ribbon tail. And I'm going to come to any set of ties on my wreath base. I'm going to add that guy in all the way down to the base of those ties. I'm going to give those ties a couple, 2 or 3 tight twists. Then I'm going to take my snips and trim off the remaining bits of those ties because we aren't going to add anything else into them. And you can throw those away. I'll just fluff my tails out, and by fluffing them out, I'm just making sure they're pointing away from the center of the wreath. And I've given them a little curve with my finger. And then I'm just going to leave my Deco mesh tube bow as it is and let it lay where it wants to lay. And then we'll move on to the next. So I'm going to go back and forth between the color combinations. So this time I'm grabbing my buffalo check. I'm eyeballing to find the center. I'm pinching in the middle. I'm folding it down over my thumb. This time I'm going to grab my orange Deco mesh tubing. I'm going to fold it into a figure 8 and leave a bit of tail on each end. And I'm going to place this guy into the very next set of ties. I'm placing it all the way down to the base of those pipe cleaner ties. I'm going to give them 2 or 3 super tight twists. And then I'm going to grab my snips and trim off the excess bits of those pipe cleaners. Then I'm going to come back in here and just pull my ribbon forward. So run my fingers over them, and move on to the next. So go ahead and add one ribbon tail and one Deco mesh tube bow to every single set of ties with the exception of one on your upper level, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now we've added our ribbon tails and our Deco mesh tube bows to every single set of ties on our frame with the exception of one on the upper level, and look how stunning this beauty is turning out to be. I cannot wait to see it come together. And so now the next step is to add in our sign. So you're going to want to be mindful and identify the set of ties that you've reserved on the upper level. And depending on where you would like to place your sign into your wreath, you're just going to want to make sure that it's in good coordination with those ties. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to add mine to the center of my wreath and down just a tad. And so my ties are here in the upper left-hand corner between 10 and 11 on a clock. And so what I'm going to do is take my two zip ties and just give them a couple twists here and add my sign into my frame. And so I'm going to poke these ties through, and I'm going to make sure they're wrapped around at least two of the rings of the wire frame so that they're nice and stable, and then I'll meet you back here. So I've just flipped my wreath over for you so that you could see this, friends, and I'm going to just make sure that that's nice and tight. I'm twisting those pipe cleaners several times. And I always prefer, if it's possible, based on your placement, that at least one set is tied around a crossbar. That just keeps your attachment or your sign from sliding around. And so now I've given each set of ties several tight twists. And now I'm just going to trim off my ends here. And then I'm going to take my fingers and just poke that tie kind of back under so it doesn't scratch my or my customer's door. And then I like to take my hot glue gun and just put a little dollop of glue right over where that pipe cleaner meets the wire frame, just to help give it some stability and helps to reduce the slide of your sign. We'll give it about a minute here to dry. If you're new to working with hot glue, when you put hot glue on to your attachment, it comes out clear. And as it dries, it turns this milky color. And that's how you can tell when your glue is dry and you can move on to the next step. While that glue is drying, you guys, I have to show you something. I've had several people ask me about this. And I'm kind of late to the game with this, but you know, you've seen me grab a couple drinks here and there throughout my videos if you're not new to my channel. And I recently bought this Hydro Flask water bottle. It comes in a million different sizes and colors, different types of tops. But you know, when I'm talking during my wreath videos, I get frequent drinks. And I just recently purchased this, and this guy stays cold forever. I wish I would have bought one of these eons ago. Basically, I fill this with, I don't know, maybe a half a cup of ice and water. And I usually drink a couple of these a day, and I don't have to replace my ice at all. In fact, the next day, there's still some ice in there. This thing is like magic. Anyway, I've had lots of you ask, so I just wanted to show you what it was. It's a Hydro Flask. I'll leave a link for you below. I actually grabbed it from Amazon, and I love, love, love it. All right, now that our glue is dry, let's flip this beauty back over. Look how stinking cute that is. If you've got any ribbon tails or curls, Deco mesh curls or tubing bundles that you wanted to pull out and free from behind your sign, just go ahead and do that now. And here's our reserved set of ties or chenille stems for a bow. And so I'm going to grab some ribbon and we'll make a quick bow to add up into the corner. All right, I'm going to scoop my wreath off to the side so that we can make this quick bow. And I'm going to make a simpler bow, guys, because I think I'm going to add a little bitty buffalo check pumpkin into the center of this. So I've grabbed a buffalo check 2.5-inch wired ribbon and a glittery orange with some black and white trim, 1.5-inch wired ribbon. Just use any coordinating ribbon that you have. Any kind is fine as long as it's wired. And then you'll need a zip tie or a chenille stem or something to secure your bow. And friends, I know that bows are really the toughest part of wreath making when you first start out. It was for me too. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through making this bow. But I will leave a couple of step-by-step slow-moving bow making tutorials for you in the description of this video so that you have that if you need to reference it. So work with me here real quickly while I make our bow. All right, I've quickly made my bow here and secured it down with a 6-inch zip tie. Just going to trim off those ends, and I've literally just got 2 loops and 2 tails of each ribbon type here. And we're going to get our wreath back into our work area and add this guy into our chenille stems. Now let me show you a little trick. Sometimes when you add your bows, you need them to be secure, of course, but maybe the chenille stems are recessed really deeply as this is, and you don't want to push your bow all the way down to the base, because then it's going to get lost in your wreath. So what you can do is take your zip tie and create a false bottom by giving it a couple of twists closer towards the surface where you want your ribbon to lay. Now, some people prefer to fluff their bows prior to adding it in. I actually do so after. You can do whatever method is comfortable for you. So I'm just going to lay this guy right on top of those pipe cleaners and give them several tight twists. Normally I would trim off those excess bits, but because they're so short, I'm just going to curl those guys back and out of the way, like so. And now I will fluff out my bow. And then grab your scissors and trim your ends. Again, dovetail or angle, either is fine. How stinking cute. All right, it's time for the last step. So I grabbed a bag of these foam pumpkins from Hobby Lobby. They are just under 2 inches in diameter, and they're foam with cloth covering. And originally I was going to add one to the center of my bow, but I think I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to place 3 around our wreath here. And I'm going to use 3 of the same size of these buffalo check. Just ties really nicely with our sign. And let me show you how we're going to attach them in, friends. So anytime I'm working with florals on any project, if it's got a really sturdy base or stem, wire stem, I keep these guys because they're great to add embellishments into your wreaths. And let me show you what I mean. So I just keep these in a jar on my work area. I'll trim off a stem here, and I always leave it a little bit longer. You can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. Then I'll decide where I want to lay my embellishments. So I think for the purposes of this wreath, we're going to go like so. So a couple of them are at an angle. Then I'll take my snips and just kind of cut a little hole. And I'll poke that piece of stem right down in there. I'll pull it back out and add a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch little bitty bead of hot glue. Just make sure that guy doesn't go anywhere. And I'll poke it back in. And then what you can do is just add that guy right down in there for your embellishment. So I'm going to run about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch bead of glue at the end here. And then I'm going to come over to my wreath and add that guy right down in. And now I know it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm not counting on that mesh alone to hold that fellow in place. I'm going to do the same thing for these next two. All right, friends, this beauty is finished. How stinking cute did this turn out? I will add a picture of this hanging on my door at the end of this video. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed creating with me today. And of course, if you're new here, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. We've got new tutorials uploading every week. Thanks, friends. Happy crafting. Okay, the second most watched tutorial of 2023 is how to make a door swag on a paint stir stick. Follow this recipe for any season. Today we're going to make something brand new on the channel, friends. We are going to make a fall door swag using a 5-gallon paint stir stick. You can actually buy these in bulk from Amazon. They come in a package of 10. All right, let's dive in. Before we start talking through our supplies, go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun so that can be heating up. I'll leave a full materials and tools list for you below in the description of this video so that you can recreate it if you'd like to do so. I'll also be posting this exact door swag in my Etsy shop if you'd like to just purchase it directly. I'll leave a link for that for you below as well. So these 5-gallon stir sticks, friends, they are 17 inches in length and about 1 inch wide, and they've got a little indent here, which is intended for the stirring, but it makes for a great spot to add a hanger. So we're going to lay this down here, and we'll go ahead and add some pipe cleaners. That's our very first step. These are just standard 12-inch pipe cleaners, and so I'm just going to take my 12-inch pipe cleaner and make a loop in the center. It kind of looks like an elongated awareness ribbon. And I'm going to give it 2 or 3 twists, like so. And then I'm going to wrap it right around where this indentation is. This will essentially be the back side. And so I'm just going to give that several tight twists, like so. And then I'll use my small snips here to trim off the excess bit of those pipe cleaners and push those down so that they're flush. So now that we've added our hanging pipe cleaner, let's go ahead and add our pipe cleaners onto the stir stick, which is how we'll be securing down our deco mesh. And so we're going to take 2 pipe cleaners at the top, and I'm just going to run that underneath so that they're essentially the same length. And I'm going to give it a couple of twists and then point those guys off to the side. We're going to add our second pipe cleaner in the exact same spot, giving it a side twist on the opposite side. So it looks something like this. We're going to come down to the bottom of our stir stick and do that same thing. You're just going to want to come up about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. And again, we'll be adding 2. Pointing one off to one side and one off to the other. And you want those pipe cleaners laying right next to one another. And we're going to do that same thing in the middle. You're welcome to measure your stir stick if you'd like. I'm just going to eyeball it. And again, adding 2 side by side. One set pointing in one direction and one in the other. it looks something like this. And then in between each set of two, we're going to add a single pipe cleaner right in the middle of those two. And again, I'm just eyeballing it, not looking for perfection. Give it a couple of tight twists and point those guys straight up. And we'll add one more to the next section. Again, just a single pipe cleaner pointing straight up. So essentially we've added 9 total pipe cleaners to this paint stir stick. We've added 3 sets of 2 for our Deco mesh holders. We've added 2 singles, and then on the back side we've added 1 as a hook. Once you've got those guys secured down, go ahead and take some hot glue and run a couple of beads over every single spot where the front pipe cleaners meet. And that just keeps it from shifting. Doesn't need to be pretty, guys. Nobody's gonna see it. Once you've got your dollops of glue at all those connecting points, go ahead and sit your paint stir stick off to the side and we'll prep our Deco mesh. You'll either want to grab a good pair of scissors and your ruler or tape measure, or in my case, I'll be using my self-healing mat and my rotary cutter. Friends, if you are new to wreath making or door swag making and you've not yet seen a rotary cutter, it's basically one of the first tools I would recommend that you add to your wreath making toolbox. And basically it works just like a pizza cutter, and it will allow you to cut your Deco mesh quickly with nice clean lines. I'll leave a link for this for you below. So for this door swag, we're going to use 3 different types of 10-inch Deco mesh. We've got a solid metallic orange, a burlap, and a solid black. And we've got 8 pipe cleaners that we'll be adding Deco mesh into. And we're going to add a burlap piece to every single set of ties. So we're going to need 8 cuts of the burlap. Let's start with that. And we're going to measure our pieces at 20 inches in length. So with your rotary cutter or your scissors, go ahead and cut out 8 20-inch pieces of your burlap. Now we're going to cut 4 20-inch pieces of the orange and 4 20-inch pieces of the black. Once you've cut all of your Deco mesh pieces, go ahead and grab your paint stir stick and bring it back to your work area. So our next step is to add our Deco mesh pieces into each of our ties here on our paint stir stick. And we're going to add 2 cruffles to every single set of ties. We're going to add the burlap color to every set of ties, and then we're going to alternate back and forth between the orange and the black. So to make a cruffle, also known as a woodland ruffle, you're going to grab your piece of Deco mesh and lay it in your workstation, curl side up. And this is a great technique to use for Deco mesh because if you're new to working with Deco mesh, you'll soon learn that Deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help prevent that fray is always ideal. And the cruffle method, or the woodland ruffle method, tucks away those raw edges to really help prevent exposure and the fray. And so all you're going to do is on one side, let me just add a little weight here, on one side of your piece of Deco mesh, again, it's curl side up, you're just going to curl in that end a couple of times, creating this little tube, which tucks away your raw edge. And then to keep things simple, I like to use a chip clip or a clothespin. They just came in a 10-pack from the Dollar Tree. Hold that curl together. Flip your piece of Deco mesh around and do the exact same thing at the other end, just a couple of curls. And then you're going to ruffle the rest of your mesh. And to do so, you're going to use your thumbs as the stationary placeholders. And then with your 8 fingers, just crawl that mesh back into your thumbs all the way to the end of your piece. Remove that clip, and you've just created your first woodland ruffle or cruffle. And so what that really means, friends, you've got a curl on each end and then the ruffle in the middle. We're going to come into our paint stir stick, and we will just add that cruffle right into our first set of pipe cleaner ties all the way down to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists. So we've added our burlap cruffle, and now I'm just going to grab orange just because it was closest to me. But remember, we're going to add 2 cruffles to every single set of ties. So I'm going to curl that end in a couple of times and hold it with my clip. Remember, my mesh was curl side up. Doing the same thing at the opposite end and crawling that mesh into my fingers. I've just made my second cruffle, and since the first cruffle, the curls were going in one direction, for the second cruffle, we're going to have them go in the opposite direction. So one time we'll lay it like this, and then like this, almost like a plus sign. And again, all the way down to the base. Give it a couple of tight twists. And point those guys right back up. Now we'll jump over to the other side. So I'm grabbing a piece of my burlap. I'm going to curl the end in here a couple of times and hold it with my clip. Spin my piece of mesh around and do the same thing to the opposite end. And making my cruffle. I'll come back to my paint stir stick and come over here to the opposite side, placing that cruffle all the way down to the base, right there in the middle, and giving it a couple of tight twists. Now, since we used orange last time, this time I'll use black. So basically we'll be alternating between the black and orange. Just to give us a nice variety. And I'm going to add that right on top of our burlap mesh all the way down to the base. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 tight twists, and I'll fluff out my cruffle. So we're going to repeat this same pattern, friends, all the way up our paint stir stick. And so I'm going to kind of alternate back and forth. So for the lower set of 2, I've got orange and black. So on my next set of 2, I'll probably do black and orange and then back to orange and black, just so for some variation. So go ahead and add 1 burlap cruffle and 1 alternating of the black and orange cruffle to every single set of ties, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now we've got our paint stir stick fully loaded with our Deco mesh. So you should have 2 woodland ruffles or cruffles added into each set of pipe cleaner ties. And at this point, friends, now that we've added in all of our Deco mesh, it is measuring about 24 inches in length and 12 inches in width, probably every bit of 8 to 10 inches in depth. Look how stinking cute that is. And this is what it looks like from the back. So adorable. And so now what we're going to do is make a cute bow to add to our very center of our swag. So I'm going to set my swag off to the side, and I've grabbed 2 12-inch pipe cleaners, and I'm going to actually marry those together, friends, so that they are longer because our swag has such depth to it. And so to elongate your 2 pipe cleaners, you're just going to make an X with about 1 inch or so of each of those pipe cleaners at the top, and then starting at one side, you're just going to twist like so until you reach the end, and then you'll do the exact same thing with that other side. Perfect. And so we've just made a 22-inch length pipe cleaner, which I feel like will be better for our swag. And now we're just going to use a few different types of wired ribbon. And really, guys, you can use any ribbon you'd like as long as it matches and coordinates well with your swag. My personal preference is that I usually mix up a 2.5-inch width ribbon with a couple of 1.5-inch ribbons. You can certainly, you know, tweak that and do it as you wish. I just recommend that you always use a wired ribbon so that your bow will shape the way that you want it to and it's not floppy. So this ribbon, I'm not sure if you can see, but it's got a really cute fuzzy orange edging and then those really cute different textured pumpkins. And so I'm going to measure 8-inch tails just using my self-healing mat for measurements. You can also use your ruler. So I've identified 8 inches and I'm going to pinch that together in my hand, give that a twist. I'm going to measure 8 inches again. That'll give me a 4-inch loop. So once you've identified 8 inches, just bring that down into your hand, pinch and gather, give it a twist. We're going to measure 8 inches again. Bring that back into your hand. Like so. And then I'm going to measure that tail at 8 inches and cut it off. And I'm just being approximate here, friends. Nobody's going to be measuring your tails. I promise you that. And now I'm going to repeat the same thing, but with my loops going the opposite direction. So I'm going to measure out an 8-inch tail, pinch that and place that in my hand. This time my tail's going the opposite direction. I'm going to give that a twist so it's going to be pretty side out. Identify that 8-inch mark and fold it in like so. I'm going to give that a twist, measure out 8 inches again, and make my last loop. One more tail coming out at 8 inches approximately. And I'll trim that guy off. So basically we've got 4 tails and 4 loops. My left hand will be my holding hand and my right hand will continue to be my working hand. And now I'm going to do the black and white 1.5-inch chevron, and this time I'm going to make 6-inch tails. I'll place that in my hand, give that a twist. I'll make 6-inch measurements for 3-inch loops. Give that a twist. Measure it out again. Sorry guys, I know it's sloppy looking here, but the process will work. I'm going to measure out my tail again to approximately 6 inches. Cut that off. So for this ribbon, guys, I've got just 2 loops and 2 tails instead of 4 and 4. And now I'm going to repeat the same process with my last ribbon, 2 loops, 2 tails at 6 inches. So a 6-inch tail, pinching that together, giving that a twist, measuring it out to 6 inches, folding that guy in, giving it a twist. And for this one, I'm just going to eyeball, guys. I'll pull those loops up to make sure they're the same length, and they are. And I'll cut that off. So now I've got this big old bow stack in my hand. I'm going to take my pipe cleaner, kind of make it into a loose V. And I'm going to wrap that guy right around this ribbon stack and give it several tight twists, like so. Now, the thing about bows, guys, look how messy that is. Bows are not pretty when you first make them. They just aren't. So don't panic, because we're going to fix that. The next thing we need to do is dovetail all of our ribbon tail ends. And to make a dovetail, you're going to fold that ribbon over onto itself, grab your scissors and come down on the folded side, not the open side, about 1 inch to 1.25 inches, and cut up diagonally like so. And then when you open it, you've got that nice, pretty dovetail. So let's go ahead and dovetail all of our ribbon tails. All right, now we've got all of our tails trimmed out. And again, it looks like a hot mess, guys. That's okay. We're going to fix that. So just making sure your tails are pretty side up. Let's add this guy into our swag. And I basically want this to be right in the middle. You could place it at the top if you wanted to, but I'd like to place mine right in the middle. And so the first thing I want to do is the middle set of pipe cleaners. I'm going to trim those guys off. I'm not going to trim off any others because I'm not sure if we're going to be adding any more in. But since we're doing a bow in the center, let's just go ahead and get rid of these guys. Just trim those guys off and toss them away. And if you need help finding that center set, friends, just flip it over where you can easily identify, and that will also show you your center point. And then we're going to, my finger's marking the back so I can kind of find that with my hand. I'm just going to weave these pipe cleaners, one around each side. Now you want it to be nice and taut, but you don't want to pull it so tightly that your bow is, you know, recessed down in. So now that I've identified it, I'm just going to give it a single loose twist to make sure I didn't recede that in too far. And I didn't. And now that I'm happy with that, I'll go ahead and give it a couple, 2 or 3 secure, not necessarily tight twists. And then I'm going to cut off the excess bit of my pipe cleaner. I'll point those ends inward. And now I'm going to take my hot glue gun and just give that 2 or 3 squeezes to really secure that guy down. And now we'll have to give it a couple of minutes to dry. All right, guys, our glue is nice and dry. So let's go ahead and fluff out our bow a little bit. And basically remember that 2.5 inch, we've got 4 loops and 4 tails. So you're going to want those loops and tails kind of going in an X pattern from one another. And to open my loops, I just place my hands in there and kind of stretch them out a little bit. Go ahead and jerk on your loops as you need to. You don't need to be super delicate. So I'm going to just start at the bottom, open up those loops, make sure those tails are also going in a nice X, like so. And then I'll move up to that next layer with our 1.5 inch. And remember, we only made 2 loops of each. So we're going to have our orange going in one direction and the black and white chevron in the other. Open those loops up with our hands and just work on those tails. You can give your tails some curve by placing them between your 2 fingers, pulling them up and over, and that's going to just give them a cute little bump. Just like that. How stinking adorable. We're going to add a few more ribbon tails into our swag, friends. We're only going to use the two 1.5-inch ribbon types. So I want you to cut 4 pieces of each of the ribbon types at 14 inches in length. So let me show you a quick way to measure here, friends. I just find that 14-inch mark like so, and then I'm going to fold it over accordion style the number of times for the pieces that I need, in this case 4. So there's 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and cut your ribbon off. And so now you've got this accordion style folded ribbon, and then fold that guy over. We're going to dovetail those ends just like we did before. Come down about 1 inch to 1.25 inches. Cut up diagonally. We've just separated those ends and dovetailed them all at the same time. Flip that ribbon stack over. Make sure your ends are married up nicely, and do that same thing. Just like so. And now what we've done here, guys, we've just measured, cut to separate, and dovetailed all in one motion. Great time saver. Let's do the same thing for the black and white chevron. We need 4 pieces at 14 inches in length. We're going to add 2 sets of ribbon tails to the bottom of our swag and 2 towards the top. So what I want you to do, guys, is take 1 of each of your ribbon types, make a loose X with them, and then kind of pinch and crawl them in the middle so they look something like this, and then kind of pull them down over your thumb so they're sort of going all in one direction. Come over to your swag, and the bottom set of ties, we're going to add 1 set of tails to each of those pipe cleaners. So place them all the way down to the center. Give those pipe cleaners 3 or 4 tight twists. Then trim off your excess bit of pipe cleaner because you won't need those anymore. And then I just take my fingers and kind of curl them back and out of the way. And I'm going to fluff out those ribbon tails like so. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. So I'm grabbing 1 of each ribbon type, making a loose X like so. I'm going to scrunch and gather that guy in the middle, give it a pinch, kind of pull all those tails down, and then I'm going to add them right next to the last set of tails we added in. Placing them down into that pipe cleaner all the way to that base. Give those pipe cleaner ends 3 or 4 tight twists. Then trim off that excess bit of pipe cleaner. Curl those ends back and under with your fingers and fluff out those tails. And again, if you run your fingers up and over, it's going to give them a cute little curly bump, just like so. Now I'm going to flip over my swag, and we're going to do the same thing to those top 2. How stinking cute is this coming along, guys? Adorable, adorable. All right, let's add some embellishments into this cutie. I've grabbed 2 candy corn picks. These are actually from the Dollar Tree. We'll add 1 to the top of our swag and 1 at the bottom. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not generally fond of Dollar Tree picks. However, I thought these were really cute. Now, because they're Dollar Tree, I want to make sure they're secure, so I'm just going to pull on each of those candy corn pieces and make sure they're on there nice and securely. They are on a wire base, so you can spread them out as you wish. And I'm just pulling them apart a little bit just to give them some depth, like so. And I'm going to trim off This stem, we don't need it. It's probably 6 inches long. We don't need it that long. I'd say 2 inches is plenty, or 3. And we're going to add this guy. We're going to add it pretty close to the bottom, kind of nestled between those 2 ribbon tail stacks, but up just a tad. I've curved this just a little bit so it lays as I want it to, and I'm just going to run about 1.5 inches bead of glue right there on that pick and push that guy right in there, like so. And then I'm going to flip this guy around, and we're going to do the same thing at the top. So I'm going to trim down my stem. We don't need that guy crazy long. And we'll do the same thing here at the top. Again, just running about 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches bead of glue and nestling that candy corn pick right down in there. Just make sure it's got something to grab a hold of. Oh my goodness, you guys, this thing is so stinking cute. So while those are anchoring down, go ahead and grab your small snips and kind of just work your way through your swag and trim off any of those excess cleaners and discard them. We're going to add a couple of these cute little foam pumpkins into our swag as well. These came in bulk from Hobby Lobby, but you can grab them from nearly anywhere. And we're going to turn them into a pick. Guys, they actually come in a bag, just a mesh bag like this with a variety of different sizes and shapes. But let me show you a little pro tip. Anytime you're working with florals, and most florals come on a nice wire stem, guys, I always keep 2 or 3 leftover wire bases specifically for making my own picks. And so what you need to do is just trim off 3 to 4 inches like so. Identify where you want to add your embellishment. In our case, we're going to add that guy right there. And then based on the angle, take your wire stem bit, poke that guy right into your embellishment, pull it right out, add a little pea-sized dollop of glue, and then poke your wire back in. That'll just help hold it in place, like so. So you want it inside the piece a good inch or so, and then you want a good inch or 2, depending on the depth available to go down into your base. I add a little bit more hot glue, and then you can press that guy right down in. Hold it for about 20 seconds or so, just give it a time to grab. And then we're going to add one more up here at the top, following that same pro tip method. So I've cut this one a little bit smaller because our pumpkin is smaller. And I want it to sit off to an angle like so. And so I'm going to push it into my pumpkin at an angle, pull it back out, add a pea-sized amount of glue, and then press that wire bit right back in there. Be careful of that glue, it's hot. I add a little bit more glue right around that base, and of course a little bead on that wire pick that we've just made, and then nestle that guy right down in. And again, hold it for about 30 seconds or so to give it a good amount of grab time. All right, and last but not least, I've got one extra candy corn pick, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just trim those guys right off of that pick, leaving about 1 inch of that stem. And we're just going to nestle them into our swag. So I think I'm going to add 1 extra candy corn to each of the stems at the top and the bottom, and 1 in the center. So just running a bit of glue right on that stem and a little dollop onto the actual piece of candy corn. to anchor this guy down. Like so. Oh my goodness, how stinking cute, you guys. I'm going to bend this stem a little bit, like so. It's almost at a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to run some glue right on that stem and about a dime size amount on the back of that candy corn. I'm going to press that right down into the center of our big bow. And this swag is finished, you guys. How stinking cute did this turn out? I hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. It helps my little channel to grow. And the #1 most watched wreath making tutorial here on the channel in 2023 is how to make a ribbon wreath. In this tutorial, we used fall themed ribbons, but of course you could use it for any season or an everyday wreath. And as long as your ribbon is wired, it's going to turn out beautifully. Happy crafting! Come on in. We've got a new wreath design today, and I'm super excited to try this with you. It's another first for me. And what we're going to make today, friends, is a fall ribbon wreath. So let me share some of the supplies with you that we'll be using. We're going to use a 14-inch wire wreath frame from the Dollar Tree, a welcome sign. I grabbed some of this burlap twine from the Dollar Tree as well. And we're going to use a variety of fall themed decorative ribbons. I'll share those with you in just a second. You're also going to need your hot glue gun and a glue stick, a good pair of scissors, either your self-healing mat for measuring purposes or a ruler. All right, friends, so this wreath has 0 Deco mesh. It's made entirely out of ribbon, and it's the first time I've ever tried this type of wreath, so I'm really excited to try this with you. But before we start in on our wreath, as always, we need to prep our sign, and I'm just going to be using this lightweight, it's actually a foam-based welcome sign, but any sign will do. And we're going to load this wreath frame with a ribbon, and then when we're finished, attach the welcome sign in the bottom center. So I'm going to add a couple of mounting brackets to this sign so that we can attach it to our wreath once it's time to do so. Friends, if you are new to wreath making and aren't familiar with mounting brackets are just 1 inch by 1 inch square pieces that you can add to your signs or embellishments to have a way to anchor them into your wreath. The top of them looks like this black piece here. There's holes all the way around so that you can run your zip ties or floral wires or pipe cleaners through that and then attach it down into your wreath. And then the back side has a super sticky 3M tape that allows you to attach it to your embellishment or sign. I typically just add 2 for my signs, and I'm just going to put 1 on either end. It doesn't need to be straight, friends. Nobody's ever going to see it. You just peel off that tape and then just give it a good push towards the end of each side of your sign here. And then to ensure that those brackets have a little bit of extra strength, I just like to take my glue gun and run a quick bead of glue all the way around each bracket, just to give it that little bit of extra strength. There we go. We'll flip it around and do the same thing to the other bracket. Now we can set our sign off to the side to give this glue time to dry. And just a little wreath 101, friends, if you are new to wreath making, this is what's called a wire wreath frame. You can get these online at Amazon, Walmart, basically any crafting store, and also at the Dollar Tree. So they're very cost effective. And this particular frame has 4 rings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then all the way around the wire wreath frame, you'll see some crossbars that go all the way around. And then the distance from one crossbar to the next is what we call a section. So just a little wreath 101 for you. Let me show you this super cute ribbon. I actually just got this in not too long ago, and it's the first time I've used it. I'm so excited. I'm really taken a liking to the navy blue, orange, and cream colors for basically any season, but most especially fall. So I've got the navy and white striped 2.5 inch. I've got a solid orange 1.5 inch, a 1.5 inch navy and white polka dot, a 2.5 inch pumpkin, and a 2.5 inch burlap and gold polka dot. So you need to choose for this type of wreath, friends, 5 different types of ribbon. They do need to be wired ribbon so that they'll maintain their shape, and at least 3 of the types that you choose need to be 2.5 inches in width. They can all be 2.5 inches in width if you would like. I did grab a couple of 1.5 inch just because I thought they were complementary, but at least 3 of your choices do need to be the 2.5 inch. And what we're going to do, friends, is spend a good bit of time here cutting our ribbon. And so we need to cut 18 pieces of each ribbon type at 8 inches in length. So let me show you a quick way to do that. With your tape measure or your self-healing mat, just measure out your 8 inches. Hold that in place with your finger. It doesn't need to be perfect, friends. Nobody's going to see it. And then once you have that marked, we're going to fold it on itself, accordion style, 18 times. And that'll keep us from having to measure each and every piece. So I'm just folding it accordion style. I find it easier to do 2 batches of 9 pieces instead of all 18 at once, but you can certainly do it how you wish. And then once you've got, in my situation here, your 9 pieces or your 18, you're just going to run your scissors through every folded spot to separate your ribbons. And then you'll flip it over and you're going to do that exact same thing. And we're just separating our ribbon folds here, friends. And then once you've separated your ribbons, this particular type isn't a good example because both sides are pretty, but most ribbon has a pretty side and a not so pretty side. This just has the slightest of difference, but just go ahead and stack your pieces pretty side up. There we go. And then we're going to trim our ends. You can choose if you want to dovetail or angle cut. Because ribbon is basically the main component of our wreath, I'm going to go ahead and dovetail. And so to dovetail your ribbon, friends, you're going to fold it in half so that those ends marry up. And then you're going to fold it in half the other way. Once you've done that, you're going to take your scissors and on the folded side, not the open side, on the folded side, you're going to come down about 3/4 of an inch and then cut up diagonally to the corner. And then once you open your piece back up, you will have dovetailed both of your ends and it's ready to go. So we're going to do that to every single piece here. If you've got a good sturdy pair of crafting scissors, you can probably do more than one piece at a time. So do as many as your scissors will allow. Just make sure you don't overburden your scissors or your cuts will be jagged. All right, friends, I've got my first 9 pieces of this particular ribbon separated out and my ends trimmed. I need to do it once again because we need a total of 18 pieces for each of our ribbon types. So again, I'm just going to measure out my 8-inch mark here. Just going to mark that with my fingers, and then I'm going to fold it accordion style 9 times. And again, I'm going to run my scissors into all of these folds here and give them a trim to separate them. Then once you have them separated, turn all of your ribbon pieces so that they are pretty side up. Now we're going to fold and dovetail our ends just like we did before. So we're going to fold it in half one direction, fold it in half the other, come down 3/4 of an inch on the fold and cut up diagonally to the corner. And that gives us our pretty dovetails. We'll add that to our pile over here. Let's get these trimmed up real quick. All right, we've got our first ribbon choice here all measured out. Our ends are trimmed and we've got it all pretty side up. I'm going to sit that off to the side and repeat that same process with the rest of the 4 different styles of ribbon that we have here. And so friends, do the same thing. You're going to need 18 pieces of every single type of ribbon, and then you're going to measure them at 8 inches in length and then dovetail them, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, you should have all of your ribbon cut and dovetailed and ready to load into our wreath. So we've got one more thing to cut and prep, and that is our string or our binder twine here. This is actually jute cord that again I got from the Dollar Tree, and I chose this because I felt like it just matched the color scheme well. You could also use some thin floral wire, some coordinating Chanel stems or pipe cleaners, or even zip ties if that's your preference. And so what we're going to do at this point, friends, remember we're going to create 18 ribbon bundles. And so we're going to need 18 pieces of our string or cord to secure down our ribbon bundles. And I'm just going to cut 18 pieces and not even really measure, friends. Are probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 inches in length. So go ahead and cut 18 pieces of your jute cord or string of choice, and I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got my jute cut and ready to go. So now we can start creating our ribbon bundles, and you can do this in one of two ways, friends. You can either make all of your ribbon bundles at once and then attach them to your frame, or you can create the bundles one by one and add them in. That's the method that I'll be using. And so remember earlier we had a little Wreath 101 and we talked about our wire frame here. We are going to create ribbon bundles and we're going to add 3 per section all the way around our wreath. And we're only going to use rings 2 and 3 on our wire frame. So you won't be using the outside ring nor the inside ring. Let's make the first 3 bundles together to complete our first section, and then we'll speed ahead. For each ribbon bundle, friends, you are going to use 1 of each piece of your ribbon type. Now, I am going to alternate which way I stack the ribbons for each bundle, so there's a little bit of variety, but you will just be using 1 piece for every single ribbon bundle. So to make our ribbon bundles, we're going to take our first piece of ribbon, and we're going to scrunch and gather. We'll take our second piece of ribbon and scrunch and gather. We're just pinching by eyeballing in the middle, and we're going to lay one on top of the other. We'll grab another piece of ribbon, scrunch and gather in the middle, place that on top, grab another piece of ribbon, pinch and pleat here in the middle, add that on top, and our last piece. So essentially we've used 1 piece of each of the ribbon types. We're pinching and gathering in the middle like a men's bow tie, and we're laying one on top of the other. Then you're going to take a piece of your string or twine or whatever you've chosen to use and wrap that around the middle of your ribbon stack. And then you're going to flip that guy over. And you'll just tie your string. I'm going to double knot it just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. And you're going to want to tie it tight, tight, tight. Then we'll tie it once more just to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. And don't worry if things don't look even, friends. We're going to be able to fluff these out once we're finished. That's the beauty of using wired ribbon. So we've just made our first ribbon bundle by using one piece of each color. Now we're going to come into our wire frame. And remember, we're just going to be using rings 2 and 3, those inner two. And we're going to alternate back and forth. And so in this first section, I'm going to actually start by wrapping it around ring 2. And I hope the camera is capturing this, friends. I'm actually going to wrap it around the crossbar, which will kind of anchor it in. So, of course, you're not going to be able to do that every single time because the crossbars are spaced out. But when you can, tie your string around that crossbar just to keep it from sliding around. And then I'm going to trim off the ends of my jute here. I just left a little bit of a nub, and we've just added our very first ribbon bundle. Now, last time I started here and just worked my way across. This time I'm going to just change it up a little bit on how I'm layering these ribbons, just to give it a little bit of variety. So we've grabbed ribbon number 1, we've pleated in the middle. We're grabbing ribbon number 2, we're pinching and pleating in the middle. We're going to lay that right on top. And ribbon number 3, pinching in the middle, adding that guy right on top. Ribbon number 4, pinching and pleating in the middle, adding it on top. And ribbon number 5, pinching and pleating in the middle, laying that guy right on top. So now we've got one of each ribbon type. They're stacked on top of one another. I'm grabbing a piece of jute, and I'm going to wrap this around this guy and give it a couple of tight knots on the back side of our ribbon bundle. And remember, friends, take your time, give yourself some grace. This is wired ribbon, so we can fluff out these ribbon bundles and make them pretty once we're finished. I'm going to give it a tight, tight knot. And then I'm going to give it a second tight, tight knot. All right, friends, we've made our second ribbon bundle. We're going to wrap a piece of jute or string right around that middle. I'm going to give it 2 tight knots. Tight, tight, tight. And it's not looking super cute right now. That's all right. We're going to fluff these guys out once we're finished. Don't worry about that. We're going to come back to our wire wreath frame. And this time we're going to wrap it, our string tails here, our jute tails, around rings 2 and 3. We're going to give it a couple of tight knots here, just to hold that guy in place. And again, don't worry that the ribbons don't look super cute yet. We're going to fix that. And then we're going to trim off the tails of our jute. All right, and now it's time for our last ribbon bundle. So I've got my first piece of ribbon. I'm pinching and pleating in the middle, and then I'm going to hold that in my hand. I'm moving on to the next ribbon, pinching and pleating in the middle, adding that on top of my stack here. Then I'll move to my third ribbon, pinch and pleat in the middle, add that guy right on top. My fourth ribbon, pinching and pleating in the middle, add that guy on top, and my last ribbon, pinching and pleating in the middle and adding it on top. I'm going to grab a piece of jute and wrap this right around our ribbon bundle. I'm going to make a couple of tight, tight knots. I'm going to come over to my wire frame and add the last ribbon bundle to the section. I'm just going to tie that right over rings 2 and 3. We're going to give that a couple of tight knots around rings 2 and 3. And then we'll take our scissors and trim off our tails here. So we've just added our first 3 ribbon bundles, friends. So we need to move on to the next section. We've added 3 to this section. And remember, every time we start a new section, we're going to anchor that first bundle to the crossbar. So continue to make your ribbon bundles, adding 3 per section, always anchoring that first one to the crossbar, and I'll meet you back here. All right, we finally got all of our ribbon bundles loaded into our wreath frame, and so now this beauty is about 18 to 19 inches in diameter and probably about 4 inches in depth. And so now what I'm going to do, friends, is just take a couple of minutes, kind of work through my wreath and just spin it around as I go, and make sure all of my ribbon tails here are going in the right direction. Nothing got tucked under or bent over. And just going to kind of fluff these tails out. So take a couple of minutes here and make sure all your ribbon tails are pointing in the direction that you would like, and I'll meet you back here. This is looking so cute, friends. We've just got one more step here, and that's to get our welcome sign added in. By now, those mounting brackets and glue are nice and dry and secure. And we're going to anchor those down with 2 floral wire stems. These are heavy duty floral wire and they are 18 inches in length. They're great for heavier additions into a wreath base. And so I'll just fold this guy in half just to identify that center point of the V. I'm going to run that right through the bracket. And then at that center point, just give it a couple of loose twists just so the wire doesn't slide out. And then we'll do the same on the opposite end. All right, friends, we've got those wires added in. So now you can add your sign wherever you'd like. I'm going to actually add mine in the very bottom in the center. And you can just do one side at a time here, friends. So I'm just going to part my ribbons. I'm going to take my floral wire stems here and wrap them around the inner 2 rings of our wreath base. Give yourself some grace with this, friends. It's a little bit tricky. I'm going to hold that sign in place, flip that guy over. I'm going to make sure that those wires are wrapped around rings 2 and 3 of our wreath so that it doesn't slide. I'm going to give it the floral wire a couple of loose twists just to hold that guy in place and make sure it didn't slide. It actually did, so we'll scoot him back in place. And now we're going to do the same to the other side. I'm just parting my ribbon, poking my wire directly through. And once I think I have it about centered, I'm just going to give it a couple of twists, just enough to hold it. I'll flip it over and make sure it's in the center, and it is. So now we'll come back through here and finish twisting this guy down. I'm actually going to also run this wire around a crossbar. That'll just keep that wire from shifting from side to side. This is a really lightweight sign, so I'm just going to give it a couple, 2 or 3 twists here. You want that at about 80% tension, tight enough that it's not going to be floppy, but you don't want it to be so tight that those mounting brackets pop off. And then once I've trimmed off that excess bit of wire, I'm just going to curl that guy down under so it doesn't poke me or my customer. One more flip and a double check. Still looks good. This sign is so lightweight that I'm only going to worry about keeping that anchored on one crossbar. That'll keep it from sliding. So again, I'm just twisting those wires 3 or 4 times at about 80% tension, snipping off that excess bit of wire, and then pinching those ends together with my needle nose pliers and curling them back down and under so that it doesn't poke our door. And now, friends, I'm just going to take a little teeny bead of glue, about a pea size actually, and put a little dollop of glue right where that floral wire meets the wire of our wreath frame. frame to give it a good strong hold, and we'll give it a couple of minutes to dry, and then I'll meet you back here. Once that glue dries, friends, you can flip that guy back over. Looks super, super cute. And now we've flattened our ribbon a little bit just as we added our sign, so you can fluff up your tails again. All right, friends, we are done. This wreath turned out so cute. And now that I'm looking at it, I feel like this wreath would be the perfect gift for someone who had a really heavy duty screen door and really didn't have a lot of depth between their primary door and their screen door. This would be the perfect piece for that type of door because it's so thin and lightweight. Thank you for spending time with me today, friends. I hope you enjoyed creating this video with me. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to grow. And of course, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks, friends. Happy crafting.